Dobro jutro. My presentation will be in English, but we can certainly get back to some questions later in Croatian. Let me start by asking a question. How many of you have any idea what is actually urban agenda for the EU? Okay. Let us then get started. Let us look at some key numbers which actually point at cities as places of high concentration of people, consumption, investments, and growth. 2/3 of European population live in cities. They account for 80% of energy consumption and generate up to 85% of GDP. So therefore, cities on one hand is strong engines of growth, innovation, employment generation. They also are boosting creativity in a globalized economy. On the other hand, there are many challenges that we encounter in cities as well, such as urban poverty, segregation, immigration, unemployment. So all of this comes together in cities. Cities are therefore both the source and the solution to global environmental, societal, and economic challenges of today. And this is why urban policies have such an importance that cross the borders of city areas, and they become a wider concept for the entire cohesion policy. Let me give you some institutional context of how it all started, because the acknowledgement of the importance of cities, urban dimension of the policies, and the concept called sustainable urban development, which I'll explain a bit later, has been growing ever since late 1990s. There were several interministerial meetings at the member state level, which all led to declarations stipulating the importance of sustainable urban development. EU Commission also already in 1997 issued an important communications towards the urban agenda in the EU. European Parliament also contributed in 2011 with their resolution on the European agenda. These are all the milestones of what we see today as a sustainable urban development, and which put forward the so-called integrated approach to the sustainable urban development, which is meant to address the complexity of issues involved that I just explained earlier in an integrated, holistic manner involving all the stakeholders and multiple sectors. So it all sort of came together. The momentum was there during the Dutch presidency last year, which took advantage of this momentum and was very much instrumental in formulation of the Pact of Amsterdam, which actually articulated what is urban agenda for the EU. So the urban agenda for the EU is the work of the partnerships composed of member states, cities, different EU institutions and expert organizations, all working together around 12 priority themes. We'll get to those in a second. And on each of this team, each of the partnership will produce an action plan that will put forward recommendations and actions for a better regulation, better funding, and better knowledge sharing and knowledge base. Let us look at what are the 12 teams. These are the first 4 teams. This is the first group of partnerships that were formed on these 4 themes. I kind of highlighted the one that have the most bearing on energy efficiency, but I may not have done the justice to the wider urban regeneration concept, which basically all the themes have bearing on the urban regeneration concept because, again, we see it as a wider effort addressing the city complexities in an integrated way. So this was the first pilot partnership referred to as Amsterdam Group of Partnerships. This is the second group that just started earlier this year. This one is referred to as Bratislava Partnership because it was approved under Slovak presidency. And the last group is the one that will start with their work this summer. It's maybe of interest to mention that on the land use partnership, the city of Zagreb, where we are right now, will take part. So let us go over a bit of a state of the play of all these partnerships. So the first pilot group, Amsterdam Group, started at the end of 2015, and they are about to produce a draft action plans within a month. This action plan will, as I said, articulate their proposal for actions on how to better improve the regulation, funding possibilities, and knowledge sharing on the first four topics: housing, air quality, migration, and urban poverty. This is a very important moment because once the draft plan is there, it will be put through the overall public consultations, through the Futurium website. You see the link at the bottom of the slide, where all of you will be able to comment. Before the plan is actually fully finalized by the end of 2017, when this is going to be a big deal because this is going to show the first accomplishments of the urban agenda for the EU. There will be a report to the Council, there will be a big cities forum, and this is the moment when everybody will kind of assess what urban agenda for the EU is actually producing. It's also important because there has been some talk on continuing with the urban agenda for the EU, expanding it to some additional topics. The first one that comes to everybody's mind is culture. It kind of coincides with next year being a year of culture, but it will all depend on what the first group will accomplish. The second group that started with work earlier this year had just produced their orientation paper. Orientation paper is the first deliverable of each of the partnerships. I personally take part in the circular economy partnerships, and what we have in our orientation paper, we kind of narrow down some areas that we'll have a closer look at, which is we'll look at cities' resources, we'll look at circular consumption, circular business enables, and we'll look at the city's circular governance on what is actually preventing cities to uptake the concept of circular economy to the greater extent. And the last partnership will start with work in summer, and their action plan will be due in a year. Okay, I skipped one. I also included in my presentation some funding possibilities for, in particular, energy efficiency and urban regeneration, but please look at the bottom of the slide. This is a separate program that actually accompanies Urban Agenda for the EU. It's Urban Innovative Actions program, which finances highly innovative projects on the 12 topics of the Urban Agenda for the EU. So you can get 5 million per project on this under Urban Innovative Actions. 2 calls are already closed, but there will be another one early 2018. Going back to our mainstream funding possibilities, which are channeled through operational programs, we are now at the midterm. So we are assessing where we are, how many projects have been earmarked so far. And I have the information that around 5,000 projects, 10 billion worth, are already selected to support low-carbon economy, including the energy efficiency of buildings and SMEs. So these are grants. These 5,000 projects are grants, but we very much favor the financial instruments to tackle these issues. And there are off-the-shelf financial instruments available for both energy efficiency and urban regeneration. Some 20 billion of ERDF and Cohesion Fund funding is planned to be delivered via financial instruments. It takes a while for a member state to set up such an instrument, but then it pays back really quickly. The effort pays back really quickly. And then finally, this is a specificity of the current programming period 14-20. The member states were obliged to designate at least 5% of their ERDF funding to sustainable urban development. Under this effort, more than 750 cities have been putting together the integrated strategies, and money will be used for projects to implement these strategies. Some 75% will be invested in energy efficiency, urban mobility, urban environment, which is urban regeneration and social inclusions. Our favorite projects are, of course, those who address wider areas or the entire neighborhoods in a holistic manner, where all these themes come together and are addressed simultaneously. And finally, let me tell you something about our knowledge sharing, learning, networking possibilities. We have our urban development network, where we deliver workshops, country-specific or thematic. This is the picture of the workshop we had on integrated territorial investments back in October, also here in Zagreb, where selected cities from Croatia and Slovenia sat together and brainstormed over implementation of their integrated territorial investments that are implemented by the biggest cities. There is also a possibility on these sustainable urban development strategies that each city had to prepare. We do peer-to-peer reviews of these strategies. So these are possibilities under what we call UDN network. There is also URBACT, a well-known project on knowledge sharing. I listed some of their initiatives that tackle energy efficiency. Anybody can participate. Any cities can become an URBACT member. And then eventually there is ESPON. It's our actually research and research evidence program. And they engage in wider research studies that are often requested by the member states themselves. But there is also a shorter and more mainstream instrument called targeted analysis, where any of you could request a short analysis of a problem you have to deal with, or so there have been already targeted analysis projects on energy efficiency and urban regeneration. Finally, DG REGIO, DG Regional and Urban Policy, not just regional policy as our program says, notice that there are so many possibilities for cities all over the different commissions, institutions. We just heard how much is there under Horizon 2020. But for cities, it's not easy to find out what is out there. So our latest effort is actually the one-stop shop for cities. And the latest link is this link. It's still work in progress, but we try to put at one place everything offered for cities under all commissions, programs, and initiatives. We'll hope you'll find good use of that. Thank you.